Episode of How I'm Building This, where we interview startup founders that are in the thick of building their startups. We learn from their mistakes and get practical tips to overcoming challenges. Today we have Alex from Continuum. What's up, Alex? Thanks so much for joining.
Prateek, great to spend some time with you. It's crazy we have to do this remote, even though I think we're only an hour away from each other. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. But Alex, hey, before we of course jump into the business, I'd love to learn, who's Alex? Where did you grow up? And really what got you from ticket sales to starting your own business?
Yeah. Well, it's probably not a conventional path that I took. Grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, actually, and when you grow up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you don't think there's much in life besides football. So actually ended up going to the University of Louisville and walked on and played football at the University of Louisville. Ended up winning a Sugar Bowl when we were there, and had an amazing staff that I got to learn from, and great, very, very committed players. And I would say we overachieved in a lot of ways, right? If you look at the recruits that we had and some of the things that we achieved and won a Sugar Bowl, we're a game away from being able to go to a national championship. And I think that really lays the foundation for a lot of the way that I operate, leading a business, leading people, and manage the operations of our business. So that laid a lot of the constructs for the way that I think through things and really the mentality that I bring to things. And we can go deeper into that. But ended up leaving college, stayed down in Louisville, and was doing commercial real estate. And at that time, like I was wanting to turn Louisville, Kentucky into like Chicago or New York, right? I was like, I remember I was on the phone with Lululemon back when Lululemon was just getting started. I was like, I got the perfect center for you, primarily female shoppers, high income. And they're like, this sounds great. Where did you say this is again? I'm like, Louisville, Kentucky. And they're like, yeah. Call me in like 5 years because I need to get 5 in LA. I need to get 6 in New York, a whole bunch of Chicago before I even entertain it. And so I think the challenge that I had at that point was like, I wanted to make change in the world. I wanted to impact the world in a positive way and build something better. And I was struggling to be able to really do that when I was in Louisville. Like I was doing, nail spas and GG cupcakes, all inline stuff, but it wasn't like changing the landscape of Louisville. And so I met a buddy and he's like, do you ever think about tech? And I was like, well, no, I haven't, right? So ended up going back to Chicago where my family had lived and joined a company, very early stage company called Sales Eye, and took that company from $1 million in revenue to 15 million in revenue. And I got the bug, right? It was like, oh my God, a startup is it's a team, right? With a mission. It was so akin to sports. I fell in love with it and I got the bug. Ended up leaving that organization. That company actually sold into distribution and manufacturing. So I've spent my whole career in the supply chain, always on the technology side since leaving real estate. Ended up leaving that company and joined a company called Connexium, which was private equity owned, and ended up leading that company from 15 million in revenue to about 50 million in revenue, and fell in love. You can look at all my social profiles. Like I took my passion for playing sports and moved into building businesses.
That's so cool. So was there like a pivotal moment growing up or like through your career where you were like, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own for myself one day?
Well, so I grew up extremely poor, looking through couch cushions for coins so we could go buy day old bread. And I remember at a very young age, I had to be 6, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to build something on my own, and I'm going to build it so that not only do I have a better life, but there's families that don't have to go through what we're going through. And I knew very young, and I just became like, my mom would make cookies and I would go sell them around the neighborhood. Right? Like I was always trying to sell something, always trying to find an angle to build a business around something. And nature versus nurture. I'm not exactly sure where it fits inside of those two, but it was in me from an early age.
That's so cool. Wow. So I saw that saw on a Crunchbase that you'll raise a $1.7 million pre-seed round. Why did you decide to raise? And why 1.7?
Well, one point. So why did we decide to raise capital? So I had bootstrapped the business to a
Okay.
few customers. I was in a position. I always say it's a little bit like cheating. I was in the supply chain for quite some time, and this concept of returns and warranties kept coming up. Right? People were like, "Hey, do you know anyone who could solve this?" I'm like, "No, no." And after a time, you hear it like 4 or 5 times. You're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, there's got to be something here." And so I had a couple customers and I said, "Hey, if I build this, would you pay me for it?" And they're like, "Yeah." So I actually ended up bootstrapping that business, building tech, and it's what we solve is pretty complex, and it takes quite a bit of 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 management to be able to build integrations and build the workflows the way to be able to truly automate what we do. So I had my own capital invested, built this out, got customers to pay, and then I was in a position where I was like, we have so much pipeline that if we close this, I need to build a team to be able to go deliver it. And so I had a concern that we couldn't go deliver. And we were in some enterprise deals that candidly, me being a solo founder and didn't really have a team at that point onshore, I needed some credibility, right? And build out a team. So that was really the genesis that initially led us to taking on capital. And in building SaaS, you could bootstrap it, you certainly can, but what we're in is really a winner take all opportunity, and so speed is so key in what we do.
That's so interesting. Wow. So on your website, you say that you've created a practical solution to reduce manual labor costs, improve the customer experience, and eliminate financial impacts on your bottom line.
Mm.
What's the pain you're solving and for whom?
Yeah, so it's all for distribution manufacturing companies. The challenge that we solve is unique. We consider it to be the multi-party return process. So if you think about the consumer world, it would be pretty rare that you go on a website, you buy something, and then to go return it, you have to pick up the phone and call someone, or you have to email in, right? There's tons of these applications in the consumer world. But when you look at the B2B world, and what we talk about B2B, we talk manufacturer sells to a distributor who sells to an end user who's typically a business.
Mhm.
So, think, the easiest construct is to say, think Milwaukee Tool sells to Granger. Granger sells to another business who could be a contractor, MRO, or OEM. And so this end user initiates a return with this distributor. And a lot of times these are defective returns, or it was a drop shipped return from the manufacturer. So the order was actually drop shipped from Milwaukee Tool to the end user. The distributor's caught in the middle in a catch 22 situation. They have a decision to make. Do I credit my customer now, or do I wait to credit my customer and potentially have impacts? If they credit the customer now, they're holding all of the risk for being able to make sure they can get credit from Milwaukee Tool because it's defective, right? They need to make sure they can get their credit. And if they say, "Oh, actually, Mr. Customer, please wait until I get my credit," well, now you have other issues of customer experience and customers not paying invoices. And so what we do is we sell to the distributor and we sell to a manufacturer. And at any point when they're both on the network, we can connect their systems. And so we're doing this in the warranties world where we could take a warranty claim on a defective that could have taken really anywhere from 30 to 45 days to execute a credit application up and down the supply chain. And we can now do that in 30 to 45 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. That is awesome.
yeah. So it's a part of the digital experience, allowing
Yeah.
end users to self-serve, giving them better visibility, proactive updates, eliminating manual labor at the distribution and manufacturing side from having to keystroke this into an ERP, and streamline the credit application up and down the supply chain, ensuring real-time transaction processing.
That's so cool, Alex. You briefly touched upon, how you got like your first few customers, which I'm assuming was, of course, part of the network that you were anyway selling to. Could you elaborate further? Was it as simple as, hey, if I build this, will you pay for it? Or like, was there like more to it?
Well, I mean, look, it's never as simple as getting people to spend money on a software product that's unproven, never been used.
Yep.
I mean, they really were build partners with us, though. And so our first customers, we were very transparent. Like we do not have this built. Give us your vision. And what's actually interesting is the first couple of customers that we had, they would tell us, oh, well, we need this or we need that. And we'd say, oh, they got to be different. That's not actually what they mean. They don't mean that they need this. They must be a snowflake. Let's move to someone else and find someone else that fits our vision.
Got it.
And so I had a very clear vision of what I thought was needed. And, I think that's really just a lesson in like build small, ship fast, get feedback is, I always say this to the team, the product team. It's like, we want to spend all this time in the lab to optimize what we have and to really to try to make sure it's perfect. And I'm like, ship it because no one knows better than our customers. And so I think what we did is we gave it to them for free to use. And when it got to a point where it was valuable enough, we basically said, hey, we have to figure out an agreement here in place and let's right size it. And so we gave them, a great sweetheart deals for our early customers to get going. But that became the proof points and validation in the market that we needed to go acquire others. Now, after those, right, your network runs out after so often, and it's probably not a good recipe to scale a business off of a network. Then we had to build a whole motion around inbound, outbound, and that go to market. And that really was, that's kind of the second phase that we stepped into, really started it 7 months ago.
That's so cool. So yeah, we'll definitely touch upon that, but I'd love to also learn. So you said ship it, let's get feedback from our customers. What's that feedback loop that you develop with your customers that sort of helps you to like iterate and move that much faster?
So in by no means do I think we're perfect here, but I think we have something pretty special when it comes to the way that we operate in this model. So when it comes to our customers, we'll often give certain, like, let's say we have a product that we want to release and we want to charge for because we have multiple products now. And so they could buy into a portion of the suite. They can buy into, there's 3 different hubs and they could buy into 1, 2, 3, and they could pick and choose. When we're releasing a product, we'll just give it to a customer for free and say, cool, use this, give us the feedback. And when we're giving it to them for free, we're typically shipping it before it's quite ready, right? Because we know that's where the feedback is. And so it's like measure fairly small, build out what you think is needed as fast as you can, make sure it actually works and functions the way you need it to, and then get it in people's hands and get the feedback. And when you do that, it's like, okay, you have a high degree of confidence you can be ready for prime time to start charging people for it. But we actually do releases twice a week. So we're a pretty fast-paced organization. And my background, if you look on my resume, is primarily sales, go-to-market, channel, building strategic partnerships. But I've always been a product-focused person. And I saw way too many times an executive leadership group who wasn't product-oriented. And I had this conversation yesterday is, if you're a business person, your product is your mechanism to go execute your business plan. It is the vehicle to get your business plan. And so you need to develop an offering that is so provocative and so valuable to your customers that they have no choice, but they want to buy it. And so that's why I think it's so important to have a symbiotic relationship between what you're building, how you're shipping, and how you can make it so easy for people to want to buy it and pay you for it. And so that feedback loop is really consistent. I mean, I would say we're very fortunate we don't have shy customers. There's no shortage of feedback. Sometimes it's happening over email, right? And every single product request, we have an email box, product requests. Like, we're getting customers sending in product requests. We'll tally it, score it, put it in Jira, figure out where it should fit into a backlog. And we're pretty focused on our current, how do we manage our sprints? And then we have sprint planning. Okay, what goes into the next sprint? And let's get these releases out and get the feedback continuously coming in. And I spend a lot of time with our customers. There's not a customer of ours that we have, even at our stage, that I don't reach out to weekly. Like, I'm still looking at their usage metrics because, hey, I noticed this. what are your thoughts? Why is that? And so constantly looking and being hungry and not waiting to be reactive to their feedback, but like, are there things we can look at and proactively ask questions? And I think it really comes down to like an intellectual curiosity of like not falling in love with your product. And I think it's easy to do as a founder is like, you're like, oh, it's so great. People are paying for it. Our pipeline's great. Our conversion rates are great. It must mean we're great. And I take a very different approach. It's like, we'll never arrive. Our product will never arrive, and it's never good enough. And I think that hunger comes through in your product.
For sure. I mean, in my line of work, I speak with startup founders almost daily.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you the number of times I hear how cool the product is, how great the vision is, how we're going to disrupt the industry without really having something shipped out, really getting feedback, and really, understanding what your customers actually need. And it's so surprising to see how many founders fall in love with their product as opposed to falling in love with what their customers actually need. And that's where the product definition typically, of course, comes in. But that said, though, Alex, from your perspective, you said 7 months ago we sort of started inbound, outbound, etc. Would love to learn, how are your customers finding out about you today?
So we are maniacal about content and about giving it for free. We hosted a webinar yesterday about how distribution and manufacturing companies can step into AI and AI strategies. And a very small portion of that webinar was about Continuum and the problems that we solve. A lot of it was what should be the mental framework in the way that distribution manufacturing companies should be about starting on their AI journey, and then what is the long-term promise of that. Oh yeah, and by the way, hey, here's how we can help you with a couple different AI strategies. And so it's funny, I had this conversation recently too with our team. Is we're talking about gated content and hey, what content do we want to gate and how do we want to build out our funnels? And I'm like, that's not that's not the philosophy we're going to take. We're going to give, and waterboard the market with content that's valuable to them. And in return, when they have a problem, they're going to call us, and that's going to happen. And so we have 3 different models to our go-to-market motion, which I would say is pretty mature for our stage. I would say more mature than most companies of our stage. One is we have a BDR outbound team. And I love that. I think Macs do that. If I do this, I can get some FICO too. So we have a BDR outbound team, and we're very targeted and strategic in the way that we outbound, right? Companies that you sell to, and it doesn't matter if you're selling to banks and you're selling fintech. It doesn't matter if you're selling a general software for SaaS. Companies run in tribes, right? They run in this tribe, and they recognize and they see themselves alike or different than other people. And so I always say, if a BDR reached out to me and they said, hey, I work with X, Y, and Z companies that look just like you, right? Which, we don't really have any head-to-head competitors, so it's a little bit harder in here and in this what we do. But like, let's say they said, I work with Loop Returns, I work with Narvar, and I work with Reverse Logics, who are all consumer apps for returns. I believe I can help you solve Y just the way I did with them. Are you willing to spend 10, 15 minutes to learn more about how we're solving these problems for these companies that look exactly like you? Well, they've just spoke to me about the tribe that I look at, and they just articulated a pain point that they can specifically solve. So I think messaging really matters, but it's the targeting that you're going at with that messaging. And so our outbound efforts are very, very focused on technographics, finding companies that use the same technologies that we integrate to, and industry. And you can't really just rely on like SIC codes or NAICS codes to be able to go do that. So that's one arm. And that actually, if you read on LinkedIn, like, outbound rates are plummeting, cold calling's dead, right? Not for us, right? And I can't say it's going to work in every single market, but I'm going to say I think if you have a provocative enough message, it will work. So that's one channel. Our second channel is marketing and inbounds, and it's just that content that we produce. If you look at our resources page on our website, you'll find articles and articles around strategy, things that you should be thinking about. How could you deploy a returns process without buying our technology? What are the things that you can do today, right? And the intent there is over time, like people will just look at us as the de facto, the company to solve the problem for them. So that's two. And number three, which I think is long term, the most exciting, and we've already seen such great success with it, is our channel partners. And this is where I think a lot of companies really struggle to execute on, because what they do is they sign a partner referral agreement. They try to refer some business back and forth, and it's like it worked for a short period of time and it kind of fizzled out. And so you could sign up 100 partners, and then you look back and you're like, it's not really performing that well. And so I think when you look at your partner channel, you need to be very mindful about the partners that are in the same value chain as you. And it's an adjacent natural conversation for that partner to bring you into the conversation. If they're not that, it's a reach, right? If they're not having the same conversation with the same personas you sell to, the same value problems that you're solving, it's going to be a reach, and you might have a short-term pop, but it's not long-term sustainable. So that's one, is making sure you're finding people in the right same value chain, in same departmental areas. But two is actually build product together. We signed up a partnership with a company called Moblico. They're a mobile app for distribution companies and manufacturers. They deploy that application completely white branded, white labeled to their customers. And we just sit inside of their app now. And so when they go to their customers and say, hey, we have another option in our app, which you can handle returns, warranties, and repairs right inside of this app. It was a less than a sprint that it took for development, but we now have an introduction to every single one of their customers, and it's good for them too, because they bring them into conversations. We bring them into discussions because we want to be where their customers are right here on the mobile phone. There's tons of examples we have of that, like e-commerce platforms built for B2B. It's a natural evolution of what they do. And so I think it's one, the strategy of finding the right partners that fit the value chain, but then two, don't leave it at that. Actually build something together that is integrated, that brings more valuable to the value to the customer. If they use this product here and your product here, that's great. But together, it's 10x.
That makes complete sense. Can you, can you talk more about building partnerships, right? I mean, so the one piece of it is, of course, building product together, but not every company can potentially do that. So in that situation, right, wherein which you cannot necessarily build product together and integrate that closely, how do you get into like a situation wherein which, sure, you can have 100 partner agreements, but then how do you ensure that you're engaging them, and how do you ensure that you're able to derive a mutually beneficial revenue relationship that goes beyond that piece of paper?
Yeah. So I led channel now at both of my previous organizations in partnership. Okay. And so we had quite a few because I couldn't get the development resources to actually build together. So you had to build just a symbiotic go-to-market motion together. Yeah. And I think it really goes back to even being more tight on point one, which is point one being the actual value chain that you bring. And here's what I've found. There's not many partners who are okay with a one-sided relationship where they sell your stuff, but you don't sell theirs. And I think this is where a lot of times it falls down, is you have two partners that go into it thinking they could sell my stuff. And then this partner's thinking, well, they could sell my stuff. And so you both are like, okay, they could sell each other's stuff. And then you start a little bit and you think about where you can make intros, but you both went into it with the mindset of the other person is going to be selling what I have. And so you need to be very upfront and transparent with your partner and have a plan together to cross-pollinate your go-to-market motions. Because if it becomes one-sided at any point, the partnership will fizzle out. And so
For sure.
things that we've done is, how do you consistently do lunch and learns to that team? So like, if you take a step back, you need to develop the plan for how each other are going to implement go to market inside of each other's organizations. Like if we're signing up for a partnership, I'm not just sending you a referral agreement and hoping we get something going. Like, let's take this bull by the horns, and together, let's really map out who owns the go to market of my partner's product inside of our organization, and how do we up level and skill our employees to do that. And if it's not interesting enough for you to want to do that, meaning like, ooh, I can't get my internal team buy-in to get my salespeople to want to talk about it, it's not the right relationship. Because, and that's why it goes back to point one of really distilling down who's in that same value chain, that when you introduce them, you're a trusted advisor and it's important. And so you'll find out pretty quickly if you can't get your organization rallied around a strategy to go sell that partner's product, or vice versa, they can't, then you probably didn't hit on the first part, which is it's actually a meaningful, impactful partnership that sits inside of a shared value chain.
That makes complete sense, Alex. Very cool. You also spoke about inbound, right? Like you spoke about, content, giving it away for free, tons of resources. There has to be more to it. What else are you guys doing that's essentially ensuring that obviously folks are finding out about you? Content is there, but are there like specific channels that you're seeing that are working well for you, especially that are focused on your inbound game?
I think you cut out for a second there, but yeah. So yes, we're obviously doing more than just content. Like, so if you stick in the content chain, right, we're doing our webinars, we produce blogs. I post every single day on LinkedIn something, and it's been crazy the amount of partnerships that we've been. We had an ERP come to us and be like, "Can you please partner with us, please?" Like,
cool.
and it's because we became thought leaders, and so that then our content now drives our partner channel, right? So there's that piece. It's kind of crazy, but in our market, trade shows work, right?
Wow.
And this is why it's like I don't think you can silo outbound, partner, and marketing, because we do a lot of partner marketing together too. So we'll have our partners. One, we'll do a press release. Two, we'll do a lunch and learn to their team, which is really kind of marketing. And then we'll do webinars to their customer base. And so I think it's this symbiotic thing across BDR, outbound, your channel partner relationships in your marketing. And in the world we live in, when we talk about spending marketing dollars, that runs through our partners too, right? Like our we'll get partners on our content, and our partners distribute our content then. But like I said, in our industry, trade shows really, really work. They do. And it's, I think you have to be mindful about where you're spending your dollars in your trade shows and how much you're doing. And a lot of that, and this is where now you talk marketing relates to BDR work. What's your plan for that trade show heading into it with your BDRs to make sure that you're set up with meetings with the executives that you want? You're all in the same place. If we get 30 minutes with an executive, our win rate is incredible. So we just got to put the time there. We're both going to be there. Let's get that time to educate them on the problem that they have. And so I think it's looking at it as a lot more than singular. And this is where a lot of companies can fall down, right? When it comes to marketing is siloed, partnerships is siloed, sales is siloed. And a lot of this has to do with compensation as well. You see a marketing team that's compensated purely on marketing inbound leads. And well, what were the number of touch points in the channel, the number of touch points in the BDR group, number of touch points in marketing? What the channel, maybe we booked it through BDR, but maybe there was a whole bunch of white papers, maybe our press release with our partner, were all touch points throughout that. And so being able to understand the life cycle of the customer, we talk about it as a heat map, right?
Okay.
So the number of touch points they've engaged with our organization through some sort of partner channel content, our content, BDR, outbound engagement. We have a, like, in our target market that our BDRs are going after, the segmented, very strategic account list, we have somewhat of a heat map to be able to be like, these companies are interested. And then it spreads out because you could see the number of people in the organization engaging with the content and how they're engaging with the content. And as you get that heat map, you can start to figure out, okay, maybe this company doesn't really understand they have a problem because we've sent a lot of content, but it's very peripheral. It's not engagement at the same rate as the next company. And so, yes, there's more than just content, but content is the beginning point to getting people to realize that there's a problem to be solved here in our world, especially. We do other things. We put together, and it kind of leads into content, but we put together surveys, right? So we paid for surveys to end users to be able to provide data points to people. And I think the more that we can provide benchmarks for other companies to measure themselves against, the more they're going to look at us as a resource that is helpful in the industry. And it is more than content, but some of that content is resource driven and how we're helpful.
That's fair. Alex, it seems like your teams are working very, very closely together and seem to be aligned. How have you structured the team in a way that they actually work together, and all of that, of course, results into new revenue?
Yeah, that's this is something that I think we've been very good at to this far. But okay, I just had a conversation. I'm like, I can see how this gets more challenging, right? We're up to 11 employees onshore. We have 13 developers offshore. Okay. It's candidly, it's not, compared to what I believe it will be, it's not that difficult yet. Okay.
Okay.
Each layer that gets added inside of our organization. So now we have Rawan. She's fantastic. She leads our pre-sales engineering and delivery group. She now has a team. So she reports to me. She has a team. So there's 3 layers to the organization. We have our development team. We have our head of product. We have our CTO. So there you could say there's really 4 layers to the organization. Marketing, we have our head of marketing and some resources that report into him. And the whole sales org reports directly into me. And I can see with each layer that gets added into the organization, it becomes more difficult to get your message, your vision, your culture clearly articulated. So if you even wind the clock back a year ago, like, it was so easy when you say, okay, well, like, hey, we're all going to huddle together and we're going to articulate it. We're going to put this plan together and we're just going to go execute. Where you start to add layers into it, and it's easy to see how, there's a game of telephone and things can get lost. So one of the things that we're doing right now is we're actively searching for a chief of staff, which is really going to, it's being proactive, and what I can already see is going to be a challenge for us. And that chief of staff is going to own one culture, right? We're maniacal about culture. Like, culture to us is super important. We had a leadership offsite meeting probably a month ago now, and one of the days we spent almost half the day talking about culture. Like, what does it mean to be a part of Continuum? What are our values that we have in our team today? What are the things that we require moving forward, and how does that align to our mission statement that we have? And it's easy because we have a group of people in our company that are highly, highly operational and very, very tactical. I would say we're probably in the top, 1% of quartile. That's great. But as we grow, we need to make sure as a company that we're the mission, the vision, the culture, and the things that are all very important to us, but we're busy heads down executing, are being top of mind and consistently reminded to all of us in the organization. And so, we have every week we have an all hands meeting with the whole company. And in that all hands meeting, the first thing that we go through is a recognition of someone this week that exemplified our company values. And we think that's important, just the reiteration of what our values are, right? And number one is you have the desire to be a part of something and build something great. Number two is being a part of something much bigger than yourself, right? Like we're building something great. It's going to be great. It's a $22 billion market opportunity, but you have to
Wow.
recognize that no individual one of us can do that alone. Not myself. Doesn't matter where you sit in the organization. We're all rowing the boat. And so I think that is really important to us. We've done a good job to date, but I can see it getting more and more challenging, which is why this chief of staff role really is going to be maniacal about these pieces in our vision and our culture.
That's absolutely fair. Alex, as founders, a lot of us have made a ton of mistakes. What are some of the mistakes looking back that you wish you hadn't done?
Yeah, so there's plenty of them. I would say this, not spending enough time in the interview process, making sure that certain individuals have the right DNA makeup to execute on what is a challenging journey. Things change often. And if you're not agile, you're going to struggle in this environment. And when I look back at it, there's a couple things that we're doing in this, but when I look back at it, I think it's looking at people and saying, wow, they have such great experience in these teams of having this operational efficiency or being able to execute this. But when you distill it down, it was always in big organizations with tons of resources. And so we've gotten away, like we're hungry for unproven people that have a desire to prove themselves. That's very different than, you can have that, but you can have someone that to be able to do that and execute that has to have an immense amount of structure around them. And I think we took, okay, this person's hungry, this person's unproven, they want to do something, and thought that was enough, that they could come in and execute. But needing the organized structure, consistent, predictable environment,
I see that. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how hungry and determined and unproven they are, they weren't going to thrive inside of that. And so I think getting really, 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 honest ourselves about the things that are going to make someone that the DNA makeup of what makes someone successful inside of our organization is probably the biggest learning that we've had in opportunity. And we invested in something called a culture index, which is really just it basically does a profile of the way this person thinks and the way they operate, and how do they work in pressure situations? How do they work when they don't have all the information that they need to be able to execute? And so we've tried to correct some of the challenges we've had in that. So that's one. Number two, I would say, is trying to, and there's a balance here, but trying to pretend you're bigger than you are to prospects. It's easy to do it, right? To bluff and say you have a feature that you could just, you could build when you don't, or to make your customer base sound bigger than it is. And I think people see through that. I think they do. I think you're way better off just being radically candid about where are you at with the product, whatever the problem is that they need to solve, what you do have, what you don't have, where it sits on the roadmap, and your reality and your confidence level to go hit whatever it is they need, or when that will happen. And I think that candor will actually set you up for much more success. Now, our branding, if you look at we try to hit above our weight class in a lot of ways when it comes to like our branding, our marketing, our messaging, the people that we have, and the skill set they have to be able to solve problems and really consult our customers. But I don't think customers, because we're selling to some, we call them enterprise, small enterprise customers that we have now, they're okay with it, right? They work with Salesforce, they work with SAP, and they also work with a company that just has 11 onshore employees too. And I think the moment you start to get really candid about kind of where you're at, it's okay. They're fine with that as long as they know you have the resources to go execute on it. And there's no need to really bluff on that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Alex, one of the things that's not really spoken out too loud is about founder mental health. How do you manage the highs and the lows and keep yourself in check?
It's not easy. It's
Not at all.
yeah, I walked on to the University of Louisville, and I've always said, like, I don't think I'm a super talented individual. I think I have skill, and skill comes from earning it, right? Talent, you wake up with, skill, you go earn. And so that mindset, it's challenging because there's never a shortage of work to get done. And so you could work, I worked last night until 11 o'clock at night, right? So I think for me, my family really grounds me, right? Like my wife is my sounding board to, like, hey, the kids haven't seen you, and like you're very short with them now, or you don't have the same patience level that you normally. And I think it's important, if you're a founder and you're single, it could be harder because for me, I have a mirror in my 3 kids and my wife every day that gets held up, to be able to check me on some of those things. But it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, especially, being a solo founder. You have to have, I think, outlets and ways. For me, I like to work out. I think it's super important. We have something called the 3 Bs inside of our company, which goes along with our culture. I came up with that while I was working out, right? We're releasing something I'm super excited about. I'm not going to talk about it yet, but it has to do with how we're going to do deployments and the speed to value. I came up with that when I was working out. And so I think you got to find your outlets. And I took a page out of Jason Lemkin's playbook. Jason Lemkin, I'm a big fan of, huge fan of. I followed Lemkin since I joined SaaS. I was like, I'm going to learn from this guy. This guy's the godfather of SaaS. So he's like, take vacations. Do it twice a year. Take them a week. Now, I struggle to turn off when I take vacations. I try so hard. There's a couple calls like I can't miss. But for me, I just took a vacation 2 weeks ago and spent time with the family. And it's like so great to reconnect and just like try to unplug. And that's not my advice. It's advice I'm taking from a guy who's been around the block quite a bit, Jason Lemkin. And I'll tell you, I think he knows something. I think there's something there. So I think you got to find whatever it is for you individually to hit, have your outlets and your release. But it is a challenge. But it's the challenge we signed up for. So I also, how much sympathy is there really?
I'm right there with you, Alex, on that for sure. That's exactly what we signed up for. Alex, this has been so much fun. What's next for you? What's next for Continuum, and how can folks keep up?
Yeah, so we have some pretty exciting news that's going to be coming out. Stay tuned. I can't release it yet, but in the next 2 weeks, you'll be seeing information out. We have some exciting things. We just hired a head of product. We're going to continue to grow. We're looking for a chief people officer. We're hiring for an account executive right now. Hiring for a senior full stack developer. You can go on our website, see all of the roles. Continuing to grow. What's next is we're releasing another product, which we're super excited about. It's our vendor and finance hub, which really connects the network piece of what we're doing. And for us, it's, how can we bring value to the supply chain and our vision and execute a completely connected supply chain? Imagine the unthinkable. So every day we're just working towards that. I think I think it's continuing to execute on what we're doing, continue to develop product, and some exciting news coming out in 2 weeks.
That's amazing, Alex. I will be staying tuned and I'll be looking forward to it. Alex, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for giving me some time, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Prateek, it was great to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Alex.